Imagine a little child sitting quietly in the corner of a noisy house, wide eyes scanning every shift in their parents' faces. Long before a harsh word is spoken, before an argument explodes, this child already feels the storm approaching. And to survive, they learn to adapt, to laugh when needed, to stay silent when it's safer, to please others in order to keep the peace. Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, left us with a shocking insight. The empath is not born as a divine gift. The empath is simply the child who was never allowed to be selfish. That sounds unsettling, doesn't it? We often glorify empathy as a superpower, as the purest form of human compassion. But Jung looked deeper. He recognized that for many, this sensitivity is not a blessing but a survival strategy, rooted in a childhood where their feelings were too much, their needs were too loud, and their very existence felt conditional on serving others. As adults, these children become the ones who can feel everyone's pain, who offer endless help, who hold the weight of the world on their shoulders. To the outside world, they look like natural caregivers, healers, the compassionate souls we all admire. But inside, there is another story, a hidden fatigue, an exhaustion that never seems to fade, and a quiet voice that whispers, "What about me?" Jung called this premature ego adaptation, a defense mechanism where the authentic self is sacrificed to ensure emotional safety. It is a trade, survival in exchange for authenticity, and that trade leaves a lasting emptiness, a deep longing to finally be allowed to exist as oneself. This is the starting point of Jung's great psychological journey, individuation, the process of becoming whole. And for empaths, it begins with understanding that their compassion, as noble as it seems, was first born from fear. To understand why empathy often feels both like a gift and a burden, Jung asked us to look back at childhood. He believed that what we call empathy in adults often begins as something far less glamorous in children: emotional hypervigilance. Picture a little one who learns to sense the moods of their parents before a single word is spoken. Their nervous system becomes a finely tuned radar, scanning constantly for emotional tremors. If the parent is upset, the child adjusts their behavior instantly. Smile, soothe, distract, disappear. If the parent is calm, the child breathes again. Over time, this child learns a dangerous equation. My needs create tension, but meeting others' needs creates safety. Jung described this as premature ego adaptation. Instead of developing a strong and healthy sense of self through love and acceptance, the child's personality bends and twists to ensure survival. They become what Jung called a psychological antenna, exquisitely attuned to others' emotions, but disconnected from their own. The cost is immense. What every child truly needs, what Jung called healthy selfishness or sacred narcissism, is sacrificed. A child should learn that it's okay to say no, to have needs, to demand respect, to be angry, to cry, to want love. But for the budding empath, all of this was deemed dangerous. The message was clear: you are safe only when you disappear. And so, empathy grows not from abundance but from absence, not from strength but from fear. It becomes a survival skill, a way to control an unpredictable environment by managing the emotions of others. This is why, Jung argued, so many empaths feel like strangers to themselves. They are experts at navigating everyone else's inner world, yet lost when asked, "What do you feel? What do you need?" What begins as a survival strategy in childhood often becomes self-destruction in adulthood. The same sensitivity that once kept you safe now keeps you stuck. As an adult empath, you might be the friend everyone calls when they are in crisis, the colleague who always picks up the slack, the partner who carries the emotional load of the relationship. On the outside, you look endlessly kind, patient, and reliable, but inside something feels off. You're drained. You're resentful. You wonder why giving so much never seems to make you feel whole. Jung saw this clearly. He explained that the empath's gift is also their wound. By silencing their own needs for so long, empaths become unable to advocate for themselves. They don't know how to set boundaries, how to say no, how to claim space in the world. Instead, they continue the pattern of childhood. If I serve others, I will be safe. If I put myself first, I will be punished. But the psyche doesn't stay silent forever. Jung noticed that in the unconscious of empaths there hides not darkness, but what he called forbidden selfishness. This is the shadow, the rejected part of the personality that contains everything they were told was wrong: anger, boundaries, ambition, self-respect, desire. Here lies the paradox. The empath gives endlessly, yet underneath simmers frustration, exhaustion, even rage. They want to walk away to finally choose themselves, but guilt stops them. They think, if I stop caring, who will I be? Jung believed this tension is no accident. He called it the compensation principle. What is repressed will eventually demand expression. The person who never says no eventually explodes. The one who gives endlessly eventually resents. And the empath who refuses their shadow becomes bitter. The cost of empathy, then, is not only burnout, it is the loss of the authentic self. The empath becomes a wounded healer, helping others while silently bleeding inside. Jung's most revolutionary insight was this: the cure for wounded empathy is not to care less, but to reclaim what he called sacred selfishness. Now, selfishness has always been a dirty word. Most empaths recoil at the thought of it because they were taught as children that their needs were dangerous, their boundaries unkind, their voice too loud. But Jung flipped the narrative. True wholeness requires the ability to love yourself as much as you love others. Sacred selfishness is not narcissism. It's not about ignoring people or shutting the world out. It is the courage to finally recognize that your needs are just as valid as anyone else's. That saying no is not cruelty, but clarity. That rest, respect, and reciprocity are not luxuries, they are birthrights. For Jung, this shift involved three crucial elements: emotional sovereignty, realizing you are not responsible for managing other people's feelings. When you stop rescuing everyone, you give them the chance to grow. Boundary consciousness, knowing where you end and others begin. Boundaries are not walls. They are the lines that make authentic relationships possible. Need legitimacy, embracing that your desires, your limits, and your dreams are real and worth honoring. When empaths practice sacred selfishness, something powerful happens. They stop giving from compulsion and start giving from choice. They stop pouring from emptiness and begin offering from fullness. Jung called this transformation differentiated love, the ability to care without disappearing, to support without absorbing, to love without losing oneself. Of course, not everyone will celebrate this change. Some people will accuse you of being different or selfish. But Jung saw this as a sign of growth. The people who truly love you will support your individuation. Those who resist were often benefiting from your self-abandonment. Sacred selfishness is not the end of empathy. It is its rebirth, empathy upgraded from survival strategy into conscious superpower. The integrated empath whole, strong, and free. Jung believed that the goal of every empath's journey is not to abandon their sensitivity but to integrate it. The integrated empath is no longer ruled by unconscious survival programming. Instead, they use their gift consciously, wisely, and with strength. This person has what Jung called conscious empathy. Unlike the automatic, compulsive empathy of childhood, conscious empathy has an on-off switch. You decide when to engage, how much to give, and when to step back. You care with intention, not obligation. The integrated empath also embodies compassionate detachment, close enough to feel with others, yet far enough to keep perspective. They can sit with another's pain without drowning in it. They can support without carrying the entire burden. This, Jung argued, is the highest form of service. Another hallmark is reciprocal relationships. The integrated empath no longer attracts only those who take and never give. Instead, they magnetize people who are also doing their inner work, individuals capable of mutual respect, shared vulnerability, and authentic love. Jung called this mutual individuation, two people meeting as equals, each responsible for their own wholeness. Of course, this transition often feels lonely at first. When you stop playing the role of caretaker, some relationships fall away. But what remains and what emerges is far deeper. True encounters, Jung said, are like chemical reactions. Both people are transformed. Ultimately, the integrated empath achieves what Jung described as psychological sovereignty. You no longer need approval to feel safe. You no longer sacrifice yourself to be loved. You stand as a whole person, sensitive yet strong, compassionate yet boundaried, giving yet self-respecting. And here lies Jung's final gift. Your empathy was never meant to be a burden. It was always meant to be a superpower. Not the survival skill of a wounded child, but the conscious choice of an awakened adult. The moment you reclaim that choice, you become not just an empath but an integrated human being.